Yeah, King P here.
And Steely07, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Metropolis. We have got a special guest with us today who hasn't been on before, so it's not Mark. It's a good friend of mine, Adam Wheeler. Hello, Adam.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for introducing me as special guest. I feel very honoured. I mean, I would have just settled for guest.
Well, me and Adam, Matt, go back 30, probably as long as I've lived. So
Yeah, pretty much.
Not giving the age away, but 34 years we've known each other.
Yeah.
And Adam is on today to not only talk about some of our favourite heroes and villains later in the show, but to kick us off, we're going to talk about Adam's own project, which is the Secret Protectors comic.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm like the worst salesperson for my own story. I don't know, it just doesn't come naturally. But yeah,
But clearly it is because, with the success of your recent Kickstarter, fantastic.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing right. If you want to tell us about that, so people might not know what the success is.
So for those who aren't aware, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform. You can basically, whatever your project may be, doesn't have to be a comic. It can be, a actual electronic good. It could be a film. People do all manner of different projects on Kickstarter. Some people might not have heard of Kickstarter, might have heard of like Indiegogo or GoFundMe, that sort of thing. So we set our goal at £2,000. That was the budget we needed to raise in order to essentially print the comic, because printing costs, unfortunately, are ridiculous. They're really, really high. So that was the main sort of cost of the comic, so to speak. But yeah, it's a joint work between me and Benjamin Nunn. He's the artist. He pretty much makes the whole thing into a comic. So I'll tell him what I think should be happening, who should be saying what, who should be in what panel, and Ben takes that away and does what he needs to do with it, basically.
The writing of it obviously is something that's been close to your heart for a long time, I think, because I've seen you talk about it before and we've had discussions about it, that you've had this idea for, I don't know, what would you say, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, I've had it for a very, very long time. It's not... I probably couldn't just put my finger on it and say like that is the moment it sprang into life. I've told this story so many times, so hopefully I'm not going to bore anyone. But I don't know if you would remember City of Heroes. It was a bit like World of Warcraft, an MMO back in the day on PC. This was still during like dial-up era, so I struggled to play the game because the internet wasn't really good enough, but they had the most amazing character creator screen, and you could give them a backstory, you could choose their powers, and yeah, just over the years, I mean, I kind of fell out of love with the game just because literally my gameplay was so laggy, but I just loved, making the characters and thinking up of these elaborate backstories. And yeah, over the years, it got to the point where I had just dozens and dozens of these characters. And when the game closed down back in like 2012, I, for whatever geeky reason I'll never know, I wrote a lot of these characters down to save them. And just with what's happened over the last few years, I mean, I don't know if you guys, I mean, obviously, you're doing your creative thing, you've got your podcast going on, and I don't know if it got to the point one day where you were just like, we have to do this. And that was very much the point I got to. It became sort of all encompassing. You couldn't really think about anything else. You were like, I have to see if I can get this done. And I managed to find Ben. Strangely enough, he literally lives about a 5-minute walk from where I just moved to, and we met up a lot of times, discussed it all. And he was happy to go in with me on the project, and here we are. Basically, it's now. I mean, it's 2017 was when we met, so now it's about 3 and a bit years later, and we've finished our first volume. So that's issues 1 to 4.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed, I was reading the first episode of it this morning. It's what it does, that amazes me is the wrong way to put it, but you said you came from sort of creating these characters in a game, and that was like the conception of them. The writing of it is really mature, not mature in the sense of like content, but mature in it seems like you've done it before or for a long while. And I think if you're sort of describing it almost as like your first venture into it, it's amazing. You've gone from not doing it to doing it. I guess it's one of those things. You had all those years of, you had all those years of sort of subconsciously honing your craft as such, like creating these characters and the backstories and that, and you was doing something you didn't really realize you were becoming a writer. So. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, no, definitely. It definitely went. It's gone through a lot of different sort of iterations in my mind. I think when I, like Kate, my wife, she sort of said to me, back in 2017, she was like, well, why don't you try and get it made? Because I just laid it out to her. I said, this is the story. This is what would happen. I kind of explained everything to her. She says, it sounds really cool. Like, why don't you try and get it made? And it's, again, like, not being an artist, it wasn't really something that crossed my mind too much. But the first thing I did was actually sit down and type out everything. So the characters, their backstories, how they'll be interacting with each other for, like, the foreseeable future. I mean, this is the first part of the story, what we're in now. I mean, I would like it to run for 10 issues, and that would be the culmination of the first story arc. But in my mind, I've got about 7 or so of those arcs.
Wow.
So
that's your life's work, then, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't know. I don't really know why my brain works the way it does. I couldn't tell you, but I love storytelling. I love story in general. So it doesn't. You talk about sort of being mature. The idea was, I mean, I was like brand new to the indie comic scene. I hadn't even really read a lot of comics growing up, truth be told, because it was quite hard to get them where we were, like me and James. Our corner shop maybe stocked the odd 1 or 2. Yeah. I was always the sort of person who wanted to read a story from start to finish. I didn't really want to just like jump in halfway through. But yeah.
Do you think though that was a benefit from the point of view you were? If you hadn't read a great deal of comics before, there wasn't an expectation of what it should be like. You was only meeting your own expectation in your mind of what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's such a hard one because I don't think I could probably give a complete answer when it comes to where all the story came from. I mean, I've got a lot of things that have influenced us, and obviously I don't want to go into too many spoilers either. So It makes it difficult to sort of say I've got this idea, and obviously Ben knows where it's all going, and I've told the wife as well, obviously, but I can't. It's very, very awkward when you're trying to tell someone about this idea you've got, because story wise you don't really want to give too much of it away.
Of course.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. It really is. I mean, I've always loved comic book characters, even if I wasn't able to read comics. I'm sure you guys remember like the old X-Men cartoon, the Batman series, Spider-Man, and I mean what you were saying about it, the sort of maturity of writing. For us, the idea was that we didn't really, as I was about to say, the indie comic scene is quite full of, there's nothing wrong with this, but very gory or very over-the-top sexualized sort of comics, and I have no issue with any of that, but it's just not really what I would want to write. So they're
trying to push the extremes because they're independent as such.
Yeah, we are kind of, when I say we, I mean like me and Ben, we're a bit of like a freak anomaly in the comic book, like the indie comic book scene, because we are telling what is essentially a sort of superhero story, which is quite unheard of in as much as you wouldn't think it would be. But indie comics, they don't really tend to focus on superhero stories. Even if there are superheroes, it's, you know, extreme sort of versions. We wanted to kind of write something that would make people think, you know, put our characters in tough situations. But the idea is that at the same time, like, you could read it and sit there with your kids and kind of enjoy it. You're going to enjoy it on one level, and they're obviously going to enjoy it on another level. It wasn't really written with any sort of specific demographic in mind. We weren't like, oh, let's write for little kids, because at the end of the day, if you write for little kids, they're going to reject it immediately. As soon as they're old enough to realise that it's written for them, they don't want it. You know, I was that way. When I was a kid, I used to wanting to watch, you know, 18s and stuff. You know, so it was very much a case of just try and respect whoever the reader may be. And yeah, like, it's all about choice and consequence, you know.
Have you been surprised since you've, because now it's released out into the world, and you was talking about not writing for a particular demographic. Clearly, it now has a demographic because you're meeting these goals and things like that. Were there any surprises when, you know, if you've met people and they said, "Oh, I really enjoyed it," or whatever it may be? Were there any surprises with who has adopted it, or any things where you thought, "Wow, that's really cool"? I'm really pleased you like it as such.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our most recent Kickstarter, obviously, it finished on Friday just gone. We raised £2,464, I think it was, in the end, which was just over, obviously, over our £2,000 goal. And we had I think it was 107 backers in the end, which for us is like incredible. You know, we've been to quite a few Comic Cons now. We've been to like Portsmouth, MCM, London Film and Comic Con, and you know, it's very rare that over the course of obviously one of those events you're going to sell 100 copies as a small press indie guy, because, you know, you might get 100 people walk past, but not everyone's going to stop and take the time to look at what you've got. And I mean, anytime someone chooses to you know, to buy something that we've created, I do feel very, very honoured, you know, with everything that's been going on over the last few months. You know, so I feel very, very honoured, very privileged that people, you know, believe in the story enough and enjoy it enough to want to consume it.